Now, I know someone clicked on this video to go, "Bro, play Yakuza like a dragon." And I will, but for now, this isn't about that, so hit that backspace key as just let me glaze the hell out of this cool cyborg ninja game. Got that? Alright, cool. Every weeb has wanted a fun game that encapsulates the over-the-top craziness that would be an anime or manga. The market for the stuff is not completely untapped, however. Games like Persona and Metaphor exist, but mostly people are disappointed with certain arena fighter games, like, let's just say, Jujutsu Kaisen Curse Clash. But let's be honest, nerds love sword fighting. Yeah, haha, funny penis joke, shut up. It's why series like Demon Slayer, Kagurabachi, and characters like, say, Yuta from Jujutsu Kaisen are so well liked, and also many other series as well. Now, I'm not going to dumb these series down to just being liked for those specific reasons, but it is a reason they're liked. Maybe a silly one, but a reason nonetheless. There's always talk about the male fantasy, whether that be dying heroically in a conflict or fighting mano a mano on equal terms. A game that is a sequel to a very, very different series that is nothing like an anime at all.
It's like one of my Japanese animes.
It's a game that was still very well liked, and for good reason. With this, I give you Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, the anime game we always wanted. Metal Gear Rising is part of the Metal Gear series and is a sequel to Metal Gear Solid 4. Initially it was meant to be Metal Gear Solid Rising, being done by Kojima Productions, and it was initially intended to bridge the gap between Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 4. However, they faced many challenges due to the game having a very, very different idea from its predecessors. The team never actually decided on an overall vision for it, due to it being very action heavy instead of stealth infiltration like previous installments. There was a lot of ambition, and as a result, there were loads of ideas floating around, but overall could never get them all to click. The project was cancelled, and Kojima himself wasn't too heavily involved in the production, but because he is an executive, he still had the power to cancel the project. So he did, or at least halted production until a solution was found.
Like underneath my feet, for a reference, when I was at Kojima Production.
The producer for the game, Korikado, I don't know how to pronounce his name, I'm just going to say Korikado. Korikado wanted to salvage the project, so they brought in Platinum Games to help with this. Platinum Games heavily focused on the gameplay, however, no longer using the story of Metal Gear Solid Rising and a new story being made instead. The cutscenes and the story were still mostly done by Kojima Productions. However, the thing I mostly want to focus on in this video is the gameplay, because let me tell you something, they knocked it out of the park. This highly packed action game includes amazing sword fighting mechanics, a feeling of badassery accompanied by some of the greatest action game music, a story filled with compelling themes that all have that Kojima spark to it. So let me explain to you why Wooden Cog Diving Sympathy is the game of all time. That's assuming you're actually watching this video instead of just having me on your second monitor. The story in this game still serves as a brilliant foundation for the gameplay, and whilst not nearly as compelling as the Metal Gear Solid narratives, the story starts off with our character of Raiden, protagonist of Metal Gear Solid 2 and a current character in Metal Gear Solid 4. Raiden, when he initially was showcased in Metal Gear Solid 2, fans did not like him, wanting to continue the story of the hero of Shadow Moses, the man who solids my snake, not this silly twink. Initially, he became a cyborg because between Metal Gear Solid 2 and 4, he was captured by the Patriots and turned into a cyborg. What is there not to like, other than just him brooding all the time? Though considering the circumstances, I'd say it's fair. Anyways, present day Raiden, 4 years after the Guns of the Patriots incident, is working for Maverick Security Consulting, mostly doing bodyguard and military training contracts to help provide for his family. The war economy is a huge thing in the Metal Gear franchise. However, after freeing the world from Patriot control in Metal Gear Solid 4, the war economy never ended, but was affected in significant ways. However, it was mostly just turning to new technologies. However, whilst Maverick may fall under a PMC that isn't the most, morally corrupt one, or, well, not bad enough that Raiden refuses to be employed by one, there are PMCs like Desperado, which stem on stirring the pot and creating conflict so that the war economy can keep on chugging. At the start of the game, you bump into Desperado whilst running security for Inmani, a prime minister for a nation in Africa, though it's never actually stated what nation this is. Regardless, Maverick fend off Desperado with Raiden taking point. However, the leader of Desperado, or at least the Winds of Destruction, the name of the circle of assassins sent after Inmani, capture the prime minister and flees. Raiden gives chase, fighting Desperado forces and just casually tosses a Metal Gear. However, it's too late before Inmani is killed by Sundowner. Raiden and Jetstream Sam fight, and Sam shits on Raiden so hard, talking philosophy and how Raiden denies his pancreas his purpose. However, before Sam can finish the job, Raiden is rescued, returning to HQ to receive treatment for his injuries. A few weeks after the Inmani incident, Raiden is sent to Azkabia to capture Dozaev, as Desperado operatives were sighted there leading a military coup. Equipped with a new cyborg body,
Double cheeked up!
that gives him even more strength and power than before. Arriving at Azkabia, he is attacked by Desperado forces, mincing his way through all of them and literally feasting on his enemies. He is halted by a tougher foe, an AI mechanical dog. However, Raiden proves victorious and has actually got this dog reprogrammed to help Raiden in the future, codenamed Blade Wolf. Moving further into the refinery, he proves victorious against one of the Winds of Destruction's assassins, Mistral. However, Dozaev blows himself up, proving the capture unsuccessful. Though their next lead is a research facility in Mexico, so Raiden heads there with Blade Wolf to investigate, arriving in the best disguise ever, adding that Kojima charm into the game. Raiden meets a boy called George, a homeless orphan like many other kids at the facility. George tells him where this research facility is being hidden. The facility itself is housing loads of children's brains, being kept in preservation, where they're going to end up being shipped off to the United States to be placed under loads of VR training, to then put those brains into cyborg bodies and send them to war. However, also learning that Desperado isn't acting on their own and is also being backed by World Marshal, the world's biggest PMC, but also Stephen Armstrong, a Colorado senator with plenty of financial and political backing. Raiden feels a personal connection to this due to how he was raised as a child soldier in Liberia, known as Jack the Ripper. With this, he sets forth to go storm the World Marshal HQ in Denver in the US. Due to Desperado's significant backing from World Marshal, military, and the media, Maverick are not going to openly oppose them, as it would be career suicide. Raiden is obviously not happy with this and sets off to take matters into his own hands, heading straight for the World Marshal HQ. With this, he also resigns from Maverick so that they're not tied to this, but they also provide support unofficially. He literally cuts his way through the entire city's privatized police force, and he and Sam discuss philosophy. Mostly that good and evil isn't so black and white. Whilst Desperado and World Marshal are in bed doing some real eye-popping stuff, get it? Raiden is also cutting down people, pumped full of fear-inhibiting nanomachines, feasting on their insides, all because they were forced to take a job as their country was embroiled in civil war and had no way to provide for their family. So they all got kitted up and chucked at Raiden, only to be minced and never seen of again. They also discuss memes with Monsoon, another Winds of Destruction operative. The actual definition of memes, not like, you know. Which I do want to talk about momentarily because I think it's interesting. Memes are an element of culture or system of behavior passed down by imitation or other non-genetic means. Memes are considered DNA in the sense that a person inherits traits from their parents via genetic DNA, but memes are inherited traits that aren't genetic. Take, for example, in most capitalist countries, the idea that getting money is the primary goal. Whether that be to get rich or survive, it doesn't matter the aims of the money, just that you need it. That in itself is a meme. And when a person has those memes, if you take them away, what do they have? Even if you're self-aware, it doesn't really change a whole lot. Because if you're not getting money to survive, then what are you doing? Even concepts like revenge is a meme. As Monsoon says, expose someone to anger long enough, they will learn to hate. Sure, in the context of this game, maybe it's a bit hyperbolic, but I still find it interesting to talk about. And even Raiden comments on how he's actually arguing philosophy with terrorists. However, embracing his Jack the Ripper nature, the normal that he was exposed to as a child, Jack the Ripper is a meme as by being forced into becoming a child soldier and being so good at it, he gets the title Jack the Ripper. That's his inherited trait by non-genetic means, and he utilizes this in order to stop Desperado, fighting Monsoon and besting him. He goes into World Marshal HQ and fights his way to the top of the building to face Sundowner. He enters the top floors where the children's brains are being kept and put through VR training. Sundowner even comments that this method would definitely work, as look at how Raiden turned out. Sundowner discusses how kids by nature are cruel and that the memes chucked into them as they grow up are the anomaly. I think it's a bit funny the way he words it though.
That's immoral. War crime this, code of conduct that.
But he says that it doesn't really matter because apparently something is going to happen in a few hours that's going to spike the demands for PMCs again, throwing the machine that is the war economy into overdrive, something so big apparently that it's going to rival 9/11. Facing Sundowner on the roof of World Marshal HQ and besting him, learning about Operation Tecumseh. This operation is where Desperado are going to launch an attack on the US president in Pakistan, as he is there to discuss peace negotiations. However, with the control of the media, spin the attack on Pakistan, creating another quote-unquote war on terror, with Armstrong being confident that if the president dies, then he can become president and invoke his will on the world. Riding with the help of Solace, a flight company, to get to Pakistan in under half an hour. Making his way there, he cuts his way out of the city, leaving Dr. to retrieve the children's brains. Bumping into San on the way, they agree that they've talked enough about higher causes, and that the victor here will decide who's right. Fighting each other a second time emerges with Raiden victorious. For some reason he abandons his bike and runs the entire way there. He arrives at Solace, reuniting with Sunny, a little girl he saved from the Patriots between Metal Gear Solid 2 and 4. Making his way to Pakistan. Arriving at the base, he encounters Armstrong piloting a Metal Gear called Excelsius. Apparently not the same as a usual Metal Gear that has nuclear capabilities, but dangerous nonetheless. However, turns out it doesn't matter if the president's dead, just an attempted assassination is enough to spike another war on terror. Destroying Excelsius in combat, Raiden then goes to take on Armstrong himself, however being absolutely washed as Armstrong is impervious to most damage, because, as most things in the Metal Gear series, the answer is... Armstrong reveals that his plan isn't actually just to spark the war economy once more, but he wants to create the war to end it. However, through a recession and having complete anarchy as a result, that only the strong will survive through fighting and dying for what they, the individual, believe in. Raiden, of course, loves this idea and the game ends. No. Raiden actually calls out this idea as batshit insane, and with the help of Blade Wolf, he uses Sam's sword in order to defeat Armstrong in combat. However, with Armstrong's death, whilst war is going to continue as an institution, he passed a meme onto Raiden, fight his own war and die for what he believes in. Whilst his ideals may not align with Armstrong, this battle shaped him into the person Armstrong wants him to be, someone who fights and dies for what they believe in. At the end, Raiden goes off to fight his own war, I'm assuming to achieve the same end as Armstrong, to end war as an institution, but also protect the weak, aka stopping innocent children being thrust into war. However, doing it his way, through his method, that he sees fit.
I've got my own war to fight.
Now, with the story out of the way, I want to go into the main chunk of this video, the bit that I want to talk about the most, and that's the... Starting off with the basics of combat, you have your movement, ninja running, which is just sprinting but automatically climbs obstacles and deflects smaller attacks. Then there's your light attack and strong attack. By pressing the buttons for these in a specific order or timing, you can perform varying attacks, utilizing your movement binds, whether that be your controller's analog stick or your keyboard. But let's be honest, if you play this game on mouse and keyboard, you deserve to be shot by firing squad. By moving in certain directions and pressing which attack it may be, you can perform unique moves like the helicopter or stiff my feet bro. Sometimes you can combo an enemy like it's a Devil May Cry game.
Smoke is sexy style!
Whilst this game doesn't hold the same features as DMC, as you're meant to clear the enemies rather than style on them, however, your stats are tracked at the end of an encounter and are given more battle points depending what rank you got. It holds similarities to Devil May Cry, but not fully there. Which is good, because if I wanted to play Devil May Cry, I would just simply play Devil May Cry. However, there is a few issues with this that I have. Well, maybe not objective issues, but stuff I still wish I could have seen regardless. For starters, if there was more air moves. There's very limited moves for when you're in the air, there's only like 2 or 3 moves. Usually just involves you doing the same combo of attacks over and over again, which can get incredibly stale after a while. However, the ground combo of moves I still find incredibly enjoyable to do, especially mixing various moves together that look flashy and feel satisfying to pull off. You've got your block and deflect, which actually differs from most traditional games. In most games you'd press a single button to block or deflect, but in Metal Gear Rising you actually have to hold the left stick whichever direction the attack is coming from, and then press X or square. It's a unique choice that I do like quite a lot, as it creates a new mechanic and dynamic for the player, as they actually have to learn to do this properly. In most games where you press the left trigger to deflect, you can just sort of spam it and hope for the best, but you can't get away with that in Metal Gear Rising. And trust me, when you learn to do it, you feel unstoppable. You've then got blade mode, which, to explain it best, imagine you're watching an anime, and the guy quickly sheaths and unsheaths his sword, slicing whatever it may be into pieces. Yeah, that's basically what that is, but in real time. Imagine doing Virgil's judgment cut, but performing each cut.
Check your balls.
It's a primary mechanic of the game, and you'll be using it a lot in combat and in puzzles. With this, you can cut your enemies into thousands of pieces, turning them into Agent Whiskey from the hit movie Peasant Man, the Bronze Square.
Put alpha gel on that, dickhead.
With Blade mode, you could strike the glowing red square, which leads into two other things. First one being Zandetsu, where you turn into Hannibal Lecter, literally ripping out your enemy's insides and consuming. Of course, the lore reason for this is being that Raiden's new body has no self-repairs, so he'll have to rip out the electrolytes from enemy cyborgs to retain his body, which in gameplay translates to healing to full health and fuel cells. Fuel cells is used for Blade mode or Berserk mode. The only problem with Zandetsu is that there's so little animations for it, which makes it become stale after a while. When you master the game's mechanics through repeat playthroughs, you never feel the need to Zandetsu, as you'll probably be okay on health, and it turns into a slog because you're stuck in an animation. More variety in how Raiden does Zandetsu, or having the ability to do it faster, keeps the player in the fast-paced gameplay and in the moment. Secondly, Berserk mode. During the point in the game where Raiden regains his Jack the Ripper persona, you also unlock Berserk mode, which makes you faster, hit harder, a lot harder, which is great for repeat playthroughs, as some encounters are straight up impossible without it. You can cut most, if not every part of the environment, and I mean that. You can cut cars, fences, trees, the path that you need to progress, and no, you don't need to see a yellow coat of paint to do this. You can just do it. The game does have stealth, but also not really. Some encounters the game will tell you that you can stealth this. Going up behind someone you can form a takedown / Zandetsu, but you can also use a barrel or a cardboard box. Not moving renders you invisible to most enemies, but if an enemy spots you moving whilst in said object, you'll be alerted. Or if they get too close, they'll spot you regardless. There's one segment where the game is like, wow, it's pitch black in here, you should stealth this segment as you can't use AR mode whilst in combat. But you can't really use AR whilst in a box either, so you're stuck using the environment with no crouch, and sometimes the takedowns can be janky to pull off. Apparently during production of Metal Gear Solid Rising, stealth was meant to be more of a pivotal aspect of the game, being a thing you can do in almost every encounter. However, I'm guessing due to the fast-paced combat, it would be sort of contradictory to have. Which, I don't know what vision they initially had for the combat in Metal Gear Solid Rising, but I can see how Revengeance's combat would go against the flow of the game overall. Whilst I'm sure you can mix both styles together, I wouldn't have the first clue how. Mentioning the stealth and the items you can use, it only makes sense I talk about the other items you can use. You have your basic stuff like Electro Paste, which grants fuel cells, and then there's Nano Repair Paste, which gives you health. Then you've got both RPGs and homing RPGs, which can be used in combat, but there's no incentive to do so as your blade is much more effective. You mostly use it for destroying vehicles and maybe stunning enemies. 3D photo frames work the same way as porno mags do in Metal Gear Solid, where it will distract the enemy as long as there are no alerts. This is actually quite handy to have. Then you've got your grenades. Starting out with a base grenade, not the greatest weapon, mostly just a decent crowd control stun, but the time it takes to pull and throw, you could have just sliced them all in the meantime. EF grenades, which is just an EMP grenade, is good for stunning cyborgs and UGs, as you disable their electronics to go for a strike. It's even good against one of the bosses. Then you have red phosphorus grenades. These are decent for a quick getaway from an encounter as they're basically smoke grenades. I imagine these were in the initial ideas for Metal Gear Solid Rising stealth. It's also decent for creating an ambush. Even with the enemies in a cautious state, you can run at them and they won't spot you until you attack. Jam grenades, which can prevent enemy alerts. Not really the greatest item because they act as the same as chaff grenades in Metal Gear Solid, but obviously this isn't Metal Gear Solid now, is it? Your upgrades that you can purchase for battle points. You can spend battle points on customizing Raiden, however most outfits are just recolors of the base skin. However, there are some fun skins like the suit, the original cyborg body, or Raiden's Metal Gear Solid 4 body. However, no coat to accompany this, which is why I installed mods using Rising Mod Manager on Nexus. There are some fun mods you can install, but I mostly just got Raiden's coat because nothing makes a nerd feel more badass than a coat flying in the wind. I think that's just coded in every dude's DNA, however. Then, you've got your basic weapon upgrades like damage, absorption, and energy buffs. Then, there's unique weapons that you get from the various bosses in the game, which whilst are cool to have, I never personally used them. Maybe it's just the weeb in me, but I really liked using the sword. However, I will admit, these do add a decent amount of variety to the gameplay. You've got the Sai, which grapples towards enemies and delivers an electric shock. You've got Mistral's Staff, which is good for crowd control and just doing AoE damage. Then you've got Sundowner's Pincer Blades, which are heavy and slow, but deal a lot of damage. However, doing various side objectives like collectibles grant you more main weapons to choose from. You've got your standard high-frequency blade, your main weapon for most of the game. You've got your high-frequency Murasama blade, which you get from the Jetstream Sand boss fight. A great upgrade for your standard blade for repeat playthroughs. The wooden sword, the best weapon in the whole game obviously. This weapon is meant to be non-lethal, as when going into blade mode you can't actually slice anyone, only just give them a major beatdown. It's good if you're trying to get a no-kill tag in an encounter, and just a fun commodity to have. Fox Blade, the blade used by Grey Fox in Metal Gear Solid 1. This, in my opinion, is the best weapon in the whole game.
I'm over a stroker, man.
Whilst it does less damage than the Morosama, it ignores armor, so most common enemies, it shreds them. However, for bosses, I would still recommend using the Morosama. You've got your longsword, earned by getting first in all VR missions. It's the same model as the standard blade, except just longer. It has less speed and uses more energy. Honestly, not worth the hassle to get it. In my opinion, kinda mid. Armor Breaker, earned by getting all ID chips from various enemies throughout the game. It operates under the same principle as the Fox Blade, but I think that's because the Fox Blade is a bonus weapon rather than a base game weapon. So if you can't get the Fox Blade, the Armor Breaker is a unique substitute. Level design in this game is unique in most levels. You travel from Africa to Azkabia, to Mexico, and from there to Denver, and then Pakistan. Though there are some levels where you just repeat the same environments, like the Denver City in Mission 5, where you backtrack the same environment, but guess this time it's daytime. Or some of the environments just go on forever, like the sewers in Mission 2, where you're navigating a lot of the same tunnels that just look copy and pasted. Though besides these small gripes, most levels in the game have their own flair and style. It's illustrated more in some of the fights where you get to see the scale of where you are, like in the first mission, the Metal Gear flings you on top of a church building, and you can see the whole city of wherever you are, but it still just helps make the game feel a little bit more alive. This game features some amazing music done by James Christopherson and other contributions from other artists like James Charles Miller, Tyson Yen, and many others. They help to create a much more enhanced experience. The lyrics complement both the story and the gameplay in the sense that the lyrics are one, fucking awesome, make sense to the story, but if you took those lyrics away, you're still left with the ability to cut your foes to this groovy beat. You've got your higher difficulties that you get from repeat playthroughs. Completing the game on hard unlocks very hard, then completing that unlocks Revengeance. Playing the game on higher difficulties makes some areas more entertaining, especially boss fights. However, some elements get worse. However, feel free to go into the comments and type lol skill issue. However, some areas of the game become impossible without Berserk mode. Some encounters become very, very unfun to do, as getting stunned is just a regular thing on normal difficulty, but on higher difficulties, it usually results in a stun lock or instant death. Some encounters become more fun because of the added challenge, but some of them you'll have to straight up cheese to get by. Although, I did notice myself utilize stealth a lot more. Now, to get into the highlight of the game, that being the boss fights. Our first boss fight of the entire game is Metal Gear Ray. That's right, this is the tutorial boss. His moveset starting out is fairly basic. He shoots bullets that you can deflect with the ninja run. Getting to him, you can strike at his legs to deal damage. Although doing enough damage allows you to blade mode his armor. Turns out you can also parry his head bashing attacks or his charge attacks, which I didn't know for ages. Oh yeah, he also shoots a fucking laser at you. However, battering him to near death, and before dealing the final blow, he makes his last stand. Raiden was smirking during that. He knows he just did something badass. Though, Ray appears not long later as you actually only cut off one of his arms, so you fight him again, where he throws his head at you, shoots lasers, and fires missiles that you can cut with blade mode. After a while, Raiden literally missile hops towards him and cuts off his other arm while being flung into the nearby church, where you will run down the church dodging missiles and lasers. If you want to create an amazing hook boss for the start of the game, this is the way to do it. Our second boss of the game is Blade Wolf. If you didn't learn how to parry multiple times, now is the time to do so, as you're not going to get past him without it. He uses his chainsaw blade attached to his back to attack you, occasionally throwing out heat daggers at you. He dashes from place to place and can tackle you to the ground and make you a victim real fast. He occasionally dashes out the battle to send in grunts to fight you, but to be honest with you, these are nothing but food for you.
Your little pussy belongs to me. You're gonna learn to do that fucking television. Bruh. Just woke up in a fucking
Mistral is our first Winds of Destruction operative that we fight, and yeah, she's a woman. She introduces herself by blowing a kiss at Raiden, and of course Raiden is scared of women. In the fight, she utilizes dwarf geckos to attack you, whether that be to step on one in a cutscene, sending the player pace barking, or using her multitude of arms, or them just being in the fight grabbing you, constantly grabbing you. This fight is funner on higher difficulties as you have the abilities to quickly dispose of the geckos. However, when starting the game, you spend more time jerking off your controller than actually fighting her. No matter though, she will not break the edging streak. Monsoon is the meme guy. His introduction starts off with him waiting on the roof like Sukuna in Yuji's domain, only to aura farm by splitting into the literal value of pi, discussing memes with Raiden, only for the two to clash at the end of it. He utilizes his ability to split when you attack him. You can parry his attacks and that give you a moment to strike, but be careful as he uses two sides to fight you, and they will fuck you back if you're not careful. He is unrelenting with his constant attacks that strike fast and hard. He can hide in the smoke cloud and strike you from any angle, so keep your wits about. Wearing him down, you literally bonk off his head from his main body, chase him down and give him a good old woof. Though after a while he literally throws the environment at you, like helicopters and tanks that you slice into bits, though he can only last so long until he slips up.
Today I'm gonna be dating and smoking cigarettes in a public.
Sundowner is a big dude obsessed with kids. I mean, the dude is probably on Epstein's list.
Kids, you can mold, manipulate.
Utilizing a set of pincer blades and a shield that explodes on contact. This guy is vicious and barbaric as he charges without mercy, bonking you straight to horny jail. Time your attacks carefully as you can cut off his shield piece by piece, though if mistimed, you will pay the price. Sundowner is the epitome of unfair child playing. He literally has a helicopter in the back shooting at you. The dude doesn't play fair. However, during the fight, Raiden asks, "What are you doing if you wake up as Adam Eve?"
I'm fucking invincible!
Let me tell you something, man.
Jetstream Sam is the equivalent of the male fantasy. Nothing but the sunset, the fields, two dudes duking it out, no bullshit. Sam utilizes his high-frequency Murasama blade, sharp and explosive with a crimson glow, in combination with his sheath that allows for a fast, precise, and brutal quick draw. A third into the fight you can disarm him, and you'd think this serves to give you an advantage. Oh no, only allows him to spare a hand, as he literally starts throwing hands, forcing Raiden to touch grass. Using strong attacks allow him to grab you if you're not careful, though after some time he'll pick up his sword again, in which he shows you the true power of Brazilian thunder thighs. Metal Gear Excelsius. Piloted by Armstrong, you're trapped in the few meters of concrete as Excelsius stomps and swings its enormous blades at you, to which you can parry both attacks, though it will still damage you however. You basically just have to wait for it to do anything before you can strike back, though damaging it enough you can slowly tear away its armor and slowly bring it to its knees. The fun part begins where you literally rip its sword off and have a sword fight, though that's not the end just yet.
Slippery little bastard. I don't have time for this.
Senator Armstrong. Armstrong at his first stages of his fight showed the odds are not in your favor at all. He literally tosses you around like a football. You'd think this dude peaked in high school, but no. However, persevering, Raiden gets up and decides for one last time he'll throw every ounce of strength he's got into his final move. Yeah, so his first two phases are scripted losses. However, when facing him for the final time, this is when the real fight kicks in. This dude has his usual punches that will send you or his ground attacks that he is one tanky motherfucker with a health pool of 200. You've simply just got to wear out his nanomachines by beating him like a Stella drinker and then miss us. He shares similarities to all foes for up to this point. However, throughout the entire game, he's changed Raiden massively. He notices the fruits of this in his final battle. This game is amazing, and I think whilst its story elements are a bit wacky and all over the place, the gameplay truly places you in the shoes of a badass cyborg ninja, and well, it's incredibly fun. It truly does make you feel like an anime character. Wow, that is the corniest thing I've ever said. If you've stuck around until the end, the only thing I can say is thank you for watching. This video, while shorter than the Watch Dogs one, I wanted it to be a bit more edit heavy, and as a result I was experimenting with different things, so I apologise if the structure was all over the place, or if something felt strange and out of place. I'm trying to keep up on my promises to post more and be more heavy on content as well. I can only play Lord of the Rings Minecraft for so long. I've got some projects I really want to do, and I'm trying my damned hardest to lock it the fuck in. Again, I know this is out of place, but shameless shit incoming. I have some socials in the description if you'd like to go follow me on there, but most importantly, I am an editor looking for work. If anyone who stumbles upon this video happens to like it or want to reach out, there is multiple ways to contact me in the description. With this, have a good rest of your day, and thank you for watching.